Assalamu alaikum to all of you, brothers and sisters. May Allah accept your fasting, accept your deeds, accept your effort in being present, inshaAllah, in this holy gathering. And may Allah grant us the honor of following the footsteps of Prophet David, Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, and Prophet Sulaiman. Prophet David alayhi salam, whom we've mentioned that one of his best attributes is that he repented. He didn't postpone his repentance. He didn't procrastinate his repentance. On the contrary, immediately he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. So let us raise our hands and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. Fastly. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أعوذ بجلال وجهك الكريم أن ينقضي عني شهر رمضان أو يطلع الفجر من ليلتي هذه ولك قبلي ذنب أو تبعة تعذبني علي بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. In a world that is full with unfairness, in a world where people are not treated equally, in a world where human rights are not taken care of and not appreciated, in a world full of double standards, where the killing of children, or starving children, or torturing children, or treating children without anesthetics is considered a terrorist attack, something that is related to oppression, to persecution, to unfairness, to injustice. In a place where it is considered like that, unfortunately, in another place, an act like this is considered as a self-defense. In a world where we have no common standards, or let's say the standards or the criteria upon which we can define an action, if it's just or not, in a world where we can't find an agreeable ground in this matter, here rises the importance of the Qur'an, the importance of the stories of the Qur'an, especially what we've been elaborating about in the last night. One of the greatest ways, one of the greatest common standards that should be applied by any jury, by any ruler, by any judge, is to follow the guidelines of legislation, even whether out of his experience or out of his intellect, even if he believed that righteousness is very clear and judgment should not be postponed, it should be applied or imposed on certain person. Following the guidelines are one of the greatest attributes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cared about when He taught His Prophet David alayhi salam to follow. One of the most important attributes also, moreover, we can say that this attribute is equally important, or let's say it's not less in its importance than the attribute of following the guidelines is an open-minded leader. A leader who is not content with low judgment when there's a better judgment, when there's a better choice, when there's a better opportunity, when there's a better way to implement and apply justice. What is that story? That story, what is the story that happened between Prophet Dawood alayhi salam and Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam. In verse number 78, Surah Al-Anbiya, which we've been reading minutes ago, Surah Al-Anbiya, verse number 78, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the story in 2 verses. وَدَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ إِذْ يَحْكُمَانِ في الحرث إذ نفشت فيه غنم القوم وكنا لحكمهم شاهدين. Dawood and Sulaiman alayhi salam were judging between 2 adversaries. When did that happen? When the sheep or a cattle of sheep overran the field or the crops of the field. At that time, 2 opponents came to King Sulaiman alayhi salam and asked for his advice. For King Sulaiman and for King David alayhi salam, peace be upon them all. What do you believe is the better choice or the better judgment? We trust you, Your Eminence, so please inform us what should we do. I'm the owner of the sheep. I'm the first opponent, and my sheep overran the field of the other opponent. The field was owned by that opponent, the other opponent. The farm, the field, had a lot of crops, had a lot of belongings, but the sheep what sabotaged all his belongings. You know? Destroyed maybe all of his crops that have been working on for maybe seasons, maybe months, maybe days, whatever. Here, King David alayhi salam made a judgment. His judgment indicates or states that the owner of the field has the right to take the cattle of the sheep. Why is that? Because the price of what was sabotaged is equal to the price of the cattle of the sheep. The cost of what the sheep sabotaged and broken or destroyed is equal to the price or to the cost of the sheep. That way, the owner of the field can take his right through compensating his loss with the cattle of the sheep, which is equal to the cost of his crops or his belongings. It's a fair judgment, right? But here, King Sulaiman alayhi salam had a better judgment. What's that? The owner of the field takes the cattle of the sheep. He takes care of the cattle of the sheep. He can exploit the milk, okay, the wool, the fur, also the calves, the new calves for the new sheep, for example. He can take care of them, and he can take advantage of them until he reaches a point where he compensates for the loss of his crops. Through what? Through the revenues that will come out of taking care of this cattle of sheep. And the owner of the sheep can take for a while the field of that farmer, fix that field, and take advantage of this field also to satisfy his minimum needs. To get food, to get food from those crops that he can plant, that he can take care of. That way, everyone will work. The owner of the field can compensate his cost by the revenues that he's going to take from the sheep, whether from the meat, from the milk, and etc. And the owner of the field won't be like homeless without home because he don't have the capability to eat or to have accommodation, because he doesn't have the money that is required to take accommodation or to rent any place or to take any place. He can take care or take advantage of the field, fix it, and what? And feed his family through the crops of that field after he fixes it. Everyone will work, right? On the contrary, the first judgment, the owner of the cattle of the sheep will lose everything. He won't have any means to feed his family. But now there's a better solution, a better judgment. Everyone, and after everyone, after the owner of the field compensate for his loss, and after the owner of the sheep fix the field and satisfy his needs, everyone substitute his ownership. So they return everything like it was before. A win-win solution. And everyone worked, and everyone fed his family. What is the wisdom behind this story? And how can we derive from this story lessons in the month of Ramadan to apply on our lives, on our community, in our society? King Dawood alayhi salam would have said to his son, King Sulaiman, you're a very young boy, you don't have experience in judging, so please sit aside and learn from your father. He could have said that. He had the option to do that. However, he acted the opposite way. He gave Sulaiman alayhi salam the opportunity to recommend a better judgment in which everyone will work and everyone eventually will revert to his right, revert to his ownership. He accepted the judgment of his son. In fact, he praised him. No, that's a better judgment. You should take it. He put his ego aside. As a ruler, he was very open-minded. He was not content with the lower judgment. If there's a better judgment, then welcome. Even if it comes from my young boy, from my young son. What a great lesson. So an open-minded leader is very important as an attribute in every ruler and every judge. A leader should be willing to listen to others, not less than he talks to others. It's very important. And he is willing to let his ego aside for the sake of the greater cause, for the sake of the greater goal. It's very important when we work with each other here to let our ego aside and to be willing to listen to other recommendations, to other analysis, to other interpretations, to other suggestions. Because this is the attribute of a prophet. This is the attribute of a prophet. That's why Imam Ali alayhi salam, in his message to Malik al-Ashtar was appointed as the governor of Egypt by Imam Ali alayhi salam. Imam Ali says to Malik al-Ashtar, ثم اختر للحكم بين الناس أفضل رعيتك في نفسك. Choose, dear Malik, as governors or as consultants of yours who will help you in your governance, choose the best residents in your kingdom. How well known for their what? For their rational mind, for their objectivity, for their good consultation. Don't be content with what you believe is right. Be willing to listen to others. Be willing to take advantage of all the skills that's around you. Because you should get your ego, put your ego aside. It's one of the greatest attributes of a leader, of an Islamic leader. ممن لا تضيق به الأمور. A person who is not content with the low judgment. He doesn't stick to his opinion. He's willing to listen to all opinions. That's why although Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in more than one battle, he knows that the right choice, for example, in the battle of Uhud, is to get out of the Medina and to not fight the infidels or the disbelievers in the Medina. Yet, he took the advice of his companions. Not because he's reluctant in his intention to get out of the Medina and to fight the infidels in Uhud. Rather, he was trying to set what? A rule to how to govern, to how to have a better leadership, how to apply justice in a better way. That's why one of the greatest leaders ever passed, ever walked on this earth, are the leaders who are willing to listen as much as they like Allah to talk. Okay. Then, another attribute that's very great to differentiate between a fair judge and an unfair judge, a just judge and an unjust judge, is to balance. Know, to be very wise, how to act to your most powerful subjects, how to control them, how to lead them, and how to deal, also balance between that and on the contrary, between the aspect or the way when you face your weakest subjects. Can you deal with them the same way? Or there's a lesson derived from the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam, how to deal with every one of them. We've said that King Sulaiman alayhi salam had most of the creatures under his control, under his will. Shayateen was shayateen, verse number 37, Surah Sad. والشياطين كل بناء وغواص. He didn't have just the jinns who were serving him in building. He had jinns who were serving him in diving and getting him pearls and really valuable stones, gold. وآخرين مقرنين في الأصفاد. Also, he had jinns who were chained in jail. So see, he had a kingdom even for the jinns. وحشر لسليمان, verse number 17, Surah An-Naml. Surah An-Naml inform us how King Sulaiman alayhi salam dealt with his weakest subjects, with his weakest civilians. وحشر لسليمان جنود من الجن والإنس والطير فهم يوزعون. And gathered for Sulaiman were his soldiers of the jinn and men and birds, and they were marching in rows, very organized. Can you imagine? Can you go with your imagination now? I'm sure you've watched a lot of movies, right? It's very close, maybe to the Lord of the Rings, of the Hobbit and something like that. Imagine now Sulaiman alayhi salam walking with thousands of soldiers, with order, jinns, and also animals. Can you just imagine how powerful he was? Why I'm saying that? Because he balanced between power and between mercy. Until they have reached the valley of the ants. حتى إذا أتوا على وادي النمل قالت نملة يا أيها النمل ادخلوا مساكنكم لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده وهم لا يشعرون. Be aware, ants, enter your dwellings, so that the soldiers of Sulaiman won't crush you while they don't see you well, while they don't feel you. What can you conclude from that? A great conclusion. You can derive from that a great detail here, which means the ants believed that the soldiers of Sulaiman won't crush them. They won't crush the ants deliberately. They have a feel of security, of trust to the king. The king Sulaiman alayhi salam cares a lot about not hurting his civilians, even his weakest civilians. وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. They don't feel us because we are very weak. But Sulaiman alayhi salam was very aware of them, even though he had all this power. And he didn't say, why should I care about an ant? He cared about this ant. فَتَبَسَّمَ ضَاحِكًا مِّن قَوْلِهَا. Verse number 19. He smiled, laughing from her saying. It's very nice to hear that the weakest civilian trust in me while I have all this power. It's nice that an ant trusts my way in dealing with the weakest civilians. Trust that I'm not an arrogant king. Trust them that I am very careful, very considerate to the feelings of the weakest creatures on earth. What a great lesson here. A faithful person in the month of Ramadan should let others feel comfortable when they are around him. Feel secure when they are around him. When a father enters the house of his family, he should let his family feel secure, comfortable. His family, his children, his wife should feel this comfort, this safety when he comes to the house. Even if he was angry after a great day, a very tiring day. Why? Because this is the attribute of King Sulaiman. This is the attribute of the most powerful prophet ever walked on earth, who had everything under his will, even the wind, the mountains. What a great power. With this great power comes greater responsibility. And this is applied by Sulaiman alayhi salam. We should apply this in the month of Ramadan. We should ask ourselves, if we left this life, will people miss us? Will they pray for us? Will they ask mercy for us? And when we are far from them, will they miss us? Or will they curse us? Will they talk badly about what we've done in terms of harming them, taking their rights, postponing the due date of, for example, giving the due date of finishing your debt for your lender, and etc. Examples like that. You can come out with a lot of examples. In the month of Ramadan, the more you are good to your environment, the more you are helpful to your environment, the more you let others feel secure and happy and peaceful around you, the more you are following the footsteps of a great king. So a greater king, a just leader, whether he's a political leader, whether he's the leader of his family, of his society, is the leader who follow the guidelines of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we've said in the story of David alayhi salam, who is very open-minded to suggestions and who is also willing to be merciful upon his subjects, his weakest subjects. That's why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, in his well-known narration that is mentioned in the traditions of both schools of thought, Shia and Sunni, اتقوا الله في الضعيفين. Be pious. In what is the way of being pious? In being mercy on the weakest individuals in human society. Women and what? Children. فتبسم ضاحكا من قولها وقال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي. Oh Allah, you gave me this power and this mercy. Please, this is all from you. So please give me the ability to thank you well properly. Because I don't believe that I have reached the level of perfection because of my efforts, mainly because of you. So again, even if I have this power, I'm not independent from you. Keep with me, keep your rope attached to me, and help me really appreciate those graces. How do I appreciate those graces? Is the meaning of shukr. You know, the shukr means that you show your appreciation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through your actions, not just with your talk, not just with praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here in terms of your actions. This is the difference, by the way, between shukr and hamd. And again, this is a secret from the Arabic language. Al-hamd means that you praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your talk. While shukr is not, the praising of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not limited to talk, but also to action. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Surah Al-Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. You know, praising to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is present in the whole world. But is thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a shukr lillahi Rabbil Alameen? Is it appropriate to say shukr lillahi Rabbil Alameen? Absolutely not. All beings are thanking Allah properly in terms of actions. They talk, and talking is different from acting. That's why وَقَلِيلٌ مِنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam was shakur because he used the graces of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of spreading the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي. And upon whom also? Upon وعلى والدي. My grace also is not because of my efforts only, as we've said before in Surah Yusuf alayhi salam. وعلى والدي, and upon my parents, because they have contributed to what I've reached now. وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه, and do good deeds with this power. وأدخلني برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. وأدخلني برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. That's why Imam Ali alayhi salam, again, will return to the message of Imam Ali to Malik al-Ashtar when he appointed him as the governor in Egypt. He told him, وَأَشْعِرْ قَلْبَكَ الرَّحْمَةَ لِلرَّعِيَّةِ. Always remember that you have to feel mercy towards your subjects, especially your weakest ones. وأشعر قلبك الرحمة للرعية. Why? والمحبة لهم, and love towards them. واللطف بهم, show compassion towards them. ولا تكونن عليهم سبعا ضاريا. Don't be on your subjects a lion who's looking for his feast, for his food. فإنهما صنفان, because there are two types. إما أخ لك في الدين وإما نظير لك في الخلق. Either he's a brother of you in terms of religion, or a brother of you in terms of humanity. And Allah is testing you through them. Now, this is how he dealt with his weakest subjects. How about how he dealt, this is the balance, with his employees. وَتَفَقَّدَ الطَّيْرِ وتفقد الطير فقال ما لي لا أرى الهدهد أم كان من الغائبين. King Sulaiman looked right, left, up, down. He didn't see the hoopoe. The hoopoe is a kind of a bird, It's very actually beautiful, with a lot of colors. Maybe found a lot of Africa. Surely in Tanzania it has the biggest. So the hoopoe was one of his employees, and he was supposed to deliver messages to other kingdoms, to other rulers. But King Sulaiman alayhi salam didn't order him to do that. So King Sulaiman, in one of the days, he didn't find him. So he asked about him. I'm not seeing the hoopoe. Where is he? Is he absent? لأعذبنه عذابا شديدا أو لأذبحنه. I will torture him and I will cause him a great pain unless he gave me an excuse, and unless he provided an alibi. Now, why the Qur'an is mentioning this? Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning in the Qur'an the strictness of Sulaiman with his hoopoe? I mean, hoopoe is a cute bird, right? After all, he's an employee. He has a job. He is trusted to what? To deliver the messages to the rulers. So he has a sensitive role here, that he should abide by a certain schedule, by certain tasks, certain criteria. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us in this story that employees has a great influence or role in applying justice in any kingdom. That's why the way of dealing with your weakest subjects, like the ant, will be different. The way you deal with your civilians is different from the way you deal with the employees who are entrusted to this, to apply this justice. So Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam was strict with him, right? But he was just. So he gave them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he has something very urgent that he should do, and I was not aware of. So let us wait. What will he say? And the hoopoe returned. فَمَكَثَ غَيْرَ بَعِيدٍ. He was not absent for a long time. فقال أحط بما لم تحط به وجئتك من سبأ بنبأ يقين. I have brought you, I have went a long distance, and I've encompassed something that you haven't encompassed before. What is that? I brought you news from the kingdom of Saba, a very huge kingdom with great power, with a great fortress, with a great castle, and the owner of this kingdom, let's say the leader of this kingdom, was a queen. What happened between the queen and King Sulaiman alayhi salam is what we will elaborate inshallah about tomorrow if Allah keeps us alive. Until then, think about this story, even maybe get your imagination to let loose, and may Allah grant us to follow the footsteps of King Sulaiman, to apply justice, to apply those criteria that the Qur'an is stating, which is 3 criteria until now, following the guidelines of legislation. There's 1 criteria to define whether this action is just or not, whether this leader is just or not, or worthy to rule or not. Secondly, an open-minded leader. And thirdly, a balance between his employees and his weak subjects, especially his weakest subjects. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.